All right, so sitting here in more rush hour traffic, not moving. Um, I got thinking that if you haven't heard about Paul Ryan's plan, or you haven't heard me talking about Paul Ryan's budget plan, basically it's a pretty huge cut to Medicare and Medicaid. Basically, what it would do is right now we have a guaranteed benefits system where you've paid into Medicare, and so you get benefits. And there are some like donut holes in Medicare and that kind of stuff. But basically, like you're pretty set on Medicare. I mean, if you've got Medicare, if you qualify for Medicare, you're old enough, etc., etc. Medicare pretty much covers your, health, a lot of your healthcare expenses, a huge chunk. And basically, what Paul Ryan wants to do to make it solvent, he doesn't want to raise taxes. Actually, he wants to cut taxes on the richest people and on corporations. But what he does is he turns it into like a voucher program where instead of just getting your Medicare benefits like you do, like at your doctor or their hospital or pharmacy, basically what you would do is the federal government would give you money, like a coupon for say $15,000, which may be the actual number he proposed. I can't remember. And then you go out to a private insurance company and buy your plan. Now, there are so many problems with just the basic concept. The idea that, people over 65 are going to be, comparison shopping for healthcare. I've tried shopping for healthcare. It's incredibly complex, and that's not to say that, there aren't 60 and 75-year-old people that can do this sort of thing. It's just that a lot of elderly people aren't maybe equipped to do the internet research or, understand what they're doing. And so the idea that we're going to send them out into, the world of privatized insurance is a little bit crazy. And, not to mention the fact that, it's difficult enough I'm 25, for me to get health insurance through a private company, with pre-existing conditions, which are now outlawed with the healthcare reform bill, and, all that kind of stuff, finding a good policy for a decent price. I have a hard time thinking that, once you add in the cost of actual healthcare in addition to the actual health insurance, that there are a bunch of people who aren't going to be able to afford good healthcare. Which leads to the next point, which is that, and I don't know if the $15,000 is indexed to, inflation or how that works, but, with the rising cost of healthcare, is that going to go up every year? I mean, which would beg the question, if it does go up every year, then why not just stick with Medicare? Because that's basically what Medicare does, is follow, the trends. It basically, in a lot of cases, institutes cost controls because doctors and hospitals and healthcare providers of other sorts, have contracted with Medicare for, this certain price. So it helps keep costs down, actually. And it was really interesting article and research in Florida that showed that Medicare actually controls costs better than private insurance. It's because there are cost controls built in. Private insurance companies aren't, necessarily as interested in cost controls because they can just jack up their rates. So instead of, working on, holding the line with people, they'll just, if they can't keep costs down, they'll just increase, their rates. So, they have two different ways to work it, whereas the government, they're already taking in, or they've already taken in this set amount of money, and they're trying to get the most bang for their buck. So they're going to work hardest for, the best deals and the best rates. So, huge issues there with the Paul Ryan plan, which seems to be what the Republicans are coalescing around. And it made me think back to part of the funny part is I think that Paul Ryan's plan relies on some of the same cost savings that the Obama healthcare reform bill, quoted. And, at that time, Republicans were saying, there's no way these cost savings would be true, blah, blah, blah. Well, the Ryan bill actually relies on some of those cost savings when it quotes, how much money it's going to save towards the federal deficit, which is pretty funny. And, it got me thinking back to, when we were talking about, Democrats were talking about cutting, I think, $500 billion out of Medicare through, cost controls and eliminating fraud and waste. There were riots in the street. Tea Partiers couldn't believe that Democrats were going to touch Medicare. We were possibly going to think about, reducing benefits, et cetera, et cetera. And, I haven't seen the same protest out for, Paul Ryan's plan, which, make no bones about it. I mean, when you actually look at what Paul Ryan's plan does, it eliminates Medicare as we know it. Medicare as we know it is gone. I think in 10 years, I think is the timeline. It grandfathers in people, I think, that are 55 or older. But otherwise, Medicare as we know it is gone. And so I'm wondering where those same people are, those same activists who, were ready to, they were bringing guns to marches and, hands off our Medicare and, crazy town halls and blah, blah, blah. And it seems like, possibly they just haven't gotten word, or maybe it's philosophical that, they didn't want the government cutting, Medicare, but they'll let us change it if it's going into private hands. I don't know. I can't rationalize why people would be upset about, Democrats cutting Medicare and not with Republicans for abolishing Medicare. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens there. But it's also great, I'm starting to see what's going on with Obama and, his negotiating style. And people have said it, left news commentators have said it before, that Obama ends, Republicans stake, crazy territory, crazy land out in the right, so far right, and then when, Democrats come back to the middle to compromise, they're not really in the middle. They're more in the center right. And, then we had this whole government shutdown showdown, and then I actually haven't heard anything about the end of the year budget, which was supposed to be, negotiated and done this week. But the next one is the debt ceiling, and Republicans are making a lot of noise that, John Boehner said that, we're not going to raise the debt ceiling unless we get something really big. So basically, Republicans are willing to let the United States basically default on its outstanding debt over partisan budget issues. And people have been very keen to point out that even under the Ryan plan that, Republicans are jumping behind because it helps put us on the path to, fiscal responsibility. Even under that plan, you'd have to raise the debt ceiling. Not even the most radical right-wing plans provide for, us not having to raise the debt ceiling and saying, oh, we've got a balanced budget, no need to raise the debt ceiling. So I'm hoping Obama, holds the line, because he gave away a lot, hundreds of millions of dollars to the WIC program, basically defunded the climate center at NOAA, because who needs to know what's going on with climate change, and all this other stuff that, I don't understand why there's not more rage on the left. I get so angry. Somebody invited me to a conversation. They were left friend and a right friend of mine were talking at lunch, and I overheard what they were talking about, and one of them asked me if I wanted to join. I said, no, because I'm almost to the point where I can't have a civilized conversation without saying fuck every other word and, calling Republicans assholes, because that's really what's going on. I mean, when you're talking about taking money out of the budget for those who most need it, I mean, are millionaires, are they, desperately in need of a leg up? And there's a great fasting campaign that's going on, 30,000 strong, because, part of these budget cuts literally could lead to more lower income families going hungry. So I'm hoping that President Obama starts finding his, guts and his courage. He's having a speech tonight. I would like for him to say, what, Republicans, let us bump up against the debt ceiling. Let that be on your head that, I cave to you on, the budget for the rest of this year, and we can talk about the budget, but I'm not going to let you hold the nation's, fiscal health at gunpoint as a bargaining tool. That, I'm not going to negotiate under these conditions, and see what the Republicans do. I mean, it hurts me to say that, that's what you've got to deal with, but I feel like he hasn't stood up to the Republicans yet, so they feel, they know he's going to cave. We're eventually going to get our way. It's just a matter of how much do we get. I mean, the Republicans were initially asking for $32 billion in cuts, and they got 38.5. And it's like, the worst, somebody made the best comment. They said, I wouldn't want the Democrats to be negotiating either a home or a car loan for me, because, the bank would offer you 5% and the Democrats would agree to 7%. I mean, that's really what's going on. So hopefully they'll start to find their way back, because they desperately need to.